Hi everyone, welcome to The Bear, the Pod, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning show The Bear, written and directed by Christopher Stower. I'm so excited for this podcast because so much news has come out about The Bear that I need to talk about it right now. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the news, then we're going to talk about the upload schedule for the podcast, and then we're going to jump into season 1, episode 2 of The Bear called Hands. But let's start by talking about some exciting news. So if you didn't know, The Bear has been renewed for season 4. I'm so excited and so surprised. We knew they were filming season 3 right now, but we weren't sure if we were even going to get a season 4. There was always rumors about season 3 being the last season of The Bear, and I kind of found peace with it. I was sad, but I was like, okay, it's fine. We'll tie it up with a bow. But it just came out that we're getting a season 4, and they're filming season 3 and 4 back to back. I don't think they're going to release it back to back. I wouldn't assume they would do that, but we know we're going to be getting a season 4 of The Bear, and I'm just bursting with excitement. Are you kidding me? Wow. So yeah, and they're filming it back to back, so it's not going to take that long for season 4 to come out after season 3. So what do I even do with this information? Scream? That's so exciting. I can't wait to see what they do with these next seasons. I am so intrigued and interested and literally excited. So that's the big news. Also, we learned that Ayo is going to be directing an episode of The Bear in this upcoming season. I don't know if she's going to be directing it in season 3 or 4. If y'all know, I haven't seen that information anywhere, but if y'all have, let me know. I'm very interested, and I can't wait to see what Ayo does when she directs. That's just so exciting. But we're getting a season 4 of The Bear. Can we get a round of applause? I don't even know what to do. But yes, so excited. But that's the big news. Next, I wanted to talk about the upload schedule of this podcast. So I'm going to be doing every Friday from now on. So there's going to be a new podcast episode every Friday. I'll let you know if that changes. I'm super busy. I am in college and I have a job as well. So I'll let you know if anything changes, but the plan is for it to be every Friday. And then I'm pretty sure once we get closer to season 3 coming out, I'm going to have to play a little bit of catch up so that I can be reacting in real time to season 3. So when it gets closer, I'll probably be uploading more frequently, but I'll let you know when that changes. But yeah, every Friday. I'll see you guys every Friday talking about The Bear. But that's kind of all I wanted to get out of the way in the beginning. But how exciting. Am I right? How exciting. But let's go ahead and jump into the episode for this podcast. So season 1, episode 2 of The Bear called Hands. So this episode opens with Carmy in New York City, and we can already tell there's something different. The color grading is completely different than what we're used to seeing in The Bear. It's vibrant, the exposure is turned up, and the environment is very sterile. So we can already assume that we're not at the beef. And then we get the title card, which confirms that. It says New York City 1 year ago. And Carmy is, I'm assuming, the sous chef at whatever restaurant we're at. I don't know which one we're at. I don't know if it's French Laundry or Noma. If y'all know that, if I missed that, very possible. Let me know if you remember what it said. But we are at, I think it's the French Laundry or Noma. I don't know. But yeah, so one of the chefs comes up and says the sauce is broken, and Carmy has to send the chef back several times to fix the sauce. And then Joel McHale, who plays the executive chef, I would assume, comes in and basically dismisses the chef that made the broken sauce several times. And he does it in a very mean way because he's not a very nice guy, as we'll soon see. He then comes up to Carmy and just starts bullying him, just fully bullying him, saying awful things, insulting things, talking about his tattoos, telling him he has a short man complex, and in the end telling him he doesn't deserve to be alive. Insane, absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of gives us a glimpse into what Carmy experienced when he was in New York. Maybe a glimpse into why Carmy is the way that he is. We do also get the chef saying in between his insults, he says, say hands. Carmy says hands. And all the chefs respond and say hands. It's a very efficient environment, but extremely stressful. And I will say it was very notable that the stress felt different than it does in the beef. It felt underlying. It felt bigger, but underlying. It was just hidden behind, efficiency in a sterile environment and people responding. But there was still noticeable stress and pressure, probably because the executive chef is the worst person in the world. That could be why. But we're immediately flashed to the beef, which is a very contrasting environment from where we just were. And Carmy is saying hands, 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 and no one is responding. The complete opposite of what we just saw from that other restaurant where everyone was tuned in and responding. And it also shows like the difference with the color grading. It's very grimy at the beef. It's dirty. There's food on the floor. And it's just very different than, like I said, the environment from the beginning. And the stress feels on top of everything. It's very obvious. It's very anxiety. It's not hidden by any sterile environment or, efficient environment. It's very obvious. And Carmy does end up mentioning the restaurants that he worked at in New York, Noma and the French Laundry. And Richie is very much opposed to anything to do with them. He's like, I don't care what you did there. And then we get Richie's random DeVry monologue about DeVry College, which I thought was really funny. He was just like, DeVry is great. I've learned everything I need to know from DeVry. And Sid is like, what? Why? What? And then we kind of get insight into Sid's admiration for both Carmy and just food and like being a chef in general. She says, I would do anything to work at Noma. And Richie goes on to say, DeVry's fine. Like Noma, who cares? And it's really funny, the contrast between Sid and Richie. It's kind of the start of the tension between them two. I mean, actually, it started in the first episode, but this is just the building of Richie and Sid and their boxing match at all times. And then Ibra comes in and says, the ice cream machine is broken, which is the funniest line delivery of all time. Like, he just comes in, he says, the ice cream machine is broken. And then he, like, exits in, like, like, the most dramatic, insane way ever. I was just like, what? Okay, bestie, like, do you? And then Carmy says, did DeVry teach you to fix that? And Richie's like, actually, yes, it did. And then he takes 2 spoons to go fix the ice cream machine. As one does. And Sid says, with two spoons? Like, what? And Sydney's line delivery of the with 2 spoons is hilarious. I recommend going back, watching that scene, and just listening for Sydney's line delivery of with 2 spoons, because it's hilarious. Because truly, what are you gonna do with 2 spoons? But you know what? I trust Richie. I'm like, you know what? You can do it. You can fix that ice cream machine with 2 spoons. He can do anything. He says it's mine too. And then we flash to Carmy in the kitchen cleaning after everyone's clocked out. We get a little montage of the clock out cards. And then we see Carmy cleaning, and we get a beautiful shot of the camera just zooming out as he cleans, which is just like, shout out to the cinematographers. Very pretty. And that cleaning scene does become significant later. I would just like to note later in the episode. And then Carmy goes home. He eats a PB&J. He drinks a Coke out of a can, a nice little popping sound. And he falls asleep watching a cooking video, which I would like to say is probably not healthy or good, especially for someone like Carmy. He's gotta separate work and like home. I know it's easier said than done, but like, my man is like, Carmy, come on. I just want what's best for him, and he's so mentally unstable that I just think he shouldn't watch cooking videos when he goes home. But I also understand, like, that's what makes him great. That's what made him great. I get it. But can you just, like, I don't know, like, watch Community or something. Yeah, Joe McHale. But watch something funny. Please don't fall asleep to cooking videos. And I was right, because, he has nightmares about the kitchen, and he ends up cooking frozen food, like in his sleep-induced stupor. He's cooking frozen food from his fridge. And at first, I thought it was a dream. Like, I didn't realize that was real. But, we learned that it's real, that he really did do that. He almost burned down his apartment by cooking food that was in boxes and things like that. Probably because he fell asleep watching a cooking video, and also because he has a lot of trauma from many things, and especially the kitchen. But gosh, sometimes, do you ever just, I don't know. Carmy stresses me out. I'm sure most of us can agree, but Carmy stresses me out. And he just needs a nap. Sometimes he needs a nap, you know? Okay. That's besides the point. Okay, and then we get a cut, and it's actually really pretty after the insanity of Carmy cooking frozen food. It's like a pretty song, or actually it's like a boppy song playing in the background, and then like a sunset and cityscapes. And I'm like, wow, that's a nice little contrast. And then we're back at the beef, and Sydney is talking to Carmy about how she would like to get paid to actually work there and not paid to just stage. And she gives Carmy a folder of all of her ideas she has to make the beef a better restaurant, which I think gives us great insight into Sydney's dedication to the beef already. This is episode 2, and she already wants to make the beef a great restaurant, a great place that runs efficiently. And I think we get insight later on in this episode as to why she wants that so badly. And I just think it's extremely admirable, and I don't know, it just establishes Sydney as such an important, necessary character, especially in regards to Carmy's character, how important it is that like that balance there, even though the balance at the beginning with Sid and Carmy is not good. It's which we'll talk about later, and you know, it comes up forever for the rest, like season 1, season 2, that balance, the stickiness of the balance between those two chefs is a common theme within the show. That was kind of a tangent, but yeah. And also notice the board that they're standing next to when Carmy first walks in. All the little drawings and notes on the board, just read them. Just go back. If you're rewatching it, go back, read the board. It's wild. It's absolutely insane. So yeah, and we get Sydney just kind of talking about all of her ideas. Carmy rejects it. He says, "Is my hair on fire?" Which I thought was funny because not yet, bestie, but soon enough. Because yeah, like, accept the help, but I understand where he's coming from as well. And then we find out that the health inspector is there. Meanwhile, Sydney is still talking about all the ways she wants to improve the restaurant. Carmy's kind of not listening. He's a little bit overwhelmed. One of the ways she wants to improve is by having people go pick up the flour. This is when we learn that Richie's license is supposedly suspended. And Sydney says, "But he drove in this morning," which I thought was funny. We also get cuts to Tina outside talking about, like, she's saying, "Beware people with little notebooks," talking about Sydney with her little notebook, which is notable as well. And I'm like, wow, that's like the start of Tina and Sydney's tension. Like, why is she hating on Sydney so bad? I get it though, because I think it's because Sydney talked about, like, I would do anything to work at Noma. And that kind of just rubbed Tina the wrong way. Like, big eye roll from Tina. She was like, oh my gosh, like, why are you here? You think you're superior, all this. Which I understand how Tina could get that, but, you know, whatevs. And I think, like, with this whole exchange with Sydney and Carmy, where she's telling him all these ideas, maybe a little bit too quickly, I think it's right idea, wrong time. Which tends to happen a lot in the show and, you know, in life. But she has good ideas, but she's just piling it on too quickly. And Carm's just like, let's not talk about this right now. And I agree. It's probably not the time. Sydney's very green, which comes up later in the show. The health inspector is not happy with the paper towels stuffed in a hole. The hot water doesn't come on as quickly as it's supposed to. And then the big thing is that there were cigarettes left near the stove, which is obviously an extreme fire safety hazard. This causes them to be awarded a C to put in their window, which is a terrible thing to have to put in a restaurant window. No one wants that. No one's going to want to eat at a nasty restaurant, you know. But this causes Richie, Carmy, honestly everyone to just start fighting with each other, but especially Richie and Carmy, they're fighting about who left the cigarettes on the stove. And of course Carmy is just like, it had to be Richie, it couldn't have been me, it was Richie. And Richie kind of accepts the fact that it probably was him as well, that left the cigarettes on the stovetop, even though honestly that's like not it. That's like, that was really bad. That's probably what got them the C. But yes, that's really big tension between Richie and Carmy, which exist forever, that tension. But that did not help anything, those cigarettes. So Carmy sends Sydney and Richie to go get caulk in order to fix the hole that had paper towel stuffed in it. And one of my favorite lines is delivered during this time when Richie's like, Sydney is not going to drive me. I'll just get an Uber. And Carmi's like, but surge rates. And then Richie's like, okay, fine, Sydney can drive. And if you listen, Sydney says that took him out. He's that broke. It took him out, like the surge rates. And her delivery once again, iconic. Ayo is the best. They get in the car. One of the craziest lines where it's like, you have to wiggle it to like get it out of park. And Sydney's like, of course, yeah. I should have known I had to wiggle it. And then he says, and I wasn't expecting company. These Arby cups are from different visits. And Sydney's like, I respect that. And I'm like, honestly, I respect that too. Like, I get it. Sometimes cups just pile up in your car and it's fine. So Sydney and Carmi, or not Sydney and Carmi, what? Sydney and Richie go get caulk. They're walking around the store and Richie's being stubborn and saying that he knows everything. And Sydney's like, please ask a worker so you get the right thing. And Richie's like, no. And we do get lots of insight into Carmi's family from Sydney's perspective. So we also didn't know a lot of the stuff, but we learn a lot about like Richie's not even really related to them. They're just best friends. And Sydney learns like what happened to Mikey and kind of how they got in the situation, the fact that Carmi was banned from the restaurant, all of this stuff. And I think this gives Sydney a new perspective, and I think it kind of helps clear up a few things after like when she was like throwing all these ideas at Carmi. Maybe it helped her understand why he wasn't super receptive to them, because there's a lot going on in his life. But I feel like that kind of changed her perspective just a little bit. I think a lot of perspective shifted during this entire trip with Richie and Sydney. And then we see Uncle Jimmy for the first time. He visits the restaurant and Carmi is telling him everything that's going wrong at the restaurant. And this is when Carmi learns about Mikey's debt to Uncle Jimmy, or Cicero, of 300 grand, which is just an insane amount of money. Like, I feel like, imagine someone telling you that. Like, you're just starting to get a restaurant off the ground, trying to do right by your family, and then turns out you owe someone 300 grand. Like, come on. And Jimmy tells Carmi to just sell him the place, and Carmi he can't. He loves the restaurant. He wants it to be great. And then we're back to Richie and Sid, and they're in the car now. And Sydney is talking about how excellent Carmi is. And this is what I was talking about from earlier in the episode. Is the fact that this is why Sydney wants to make the restaurant great. This is why Sydney wants to work with Carmi. It's because she admires him. She admires his work. She admires the fact that he's like one of the best chefs in America, like truthfully. And this kind of gave me insight, at least, into why Sydney is so inspired by this restaurant, so dedicated to making the restaurant great. And I just thought that was really interesting. And then we also get insight into Richie's life when he talks to his daughter on the phone, and we kind of see a softer side of Richie, and I think Sydney sees the softer side of Richie too, because after this phone call, he kind of gives in, takes a big sigh of relief, and it's like, oh, I messed up with the cigarettes. Like, he admits it, and that's like the first time we see him taking accountability. And then he also says, like, I got the wrong caulk. And Sydney's like, don't worry, I got the right one. Sydney saves the day. Pretty iconic. Also, great line delivered in the car is when Richie's on the phone with his daughter, and Sydney's like, oh, how old's your daughter? And he's like, she's 5, like Carmi. It took me out. And then we are back to the restaurant. Carmi is flipping through Sydney's book that she gave him, and then he calls Sugar to tell her about his dream, about what he's been experiencing, and about like the frozen food thing. Sugar says, did you check out the thing? We later learn what the thing is. But yeah, and it's kind of just like crazy that he calls her to just tell her this insane, like to tell her insane things. But yeah, we actually do get an interaction between Carmi and Pete too. So he calls Pete technically, and then Pete hands the phone to Sugar. Pete is Sugar's husband, and we kind of get a glimpse into, I guess, something happened between Carmi and Pete, and Carmi's like, I just want to apologize for what I did, and Pete's like, it's okay, I went to urgent care and they gave me some cream. And it's just like, huh? Like, what exactly happened? And I love when the Bear does that. Like, the Bear does this a lot in the future too, in like future seasons, and I just think it's so funny because it just leaves the viewer like, what happened? Like, huh? And I just thought that was really funny. We also have Carmi asking Sugar what she's cooking, and she says mom's chicken, and he writes down that recipe. And then one of my favorite lines delivered on the phone when Carmi's telling Sugar about bad things happening and like him almost burning down his apartment. Um, she like says like be quiet or something, and then Pete's like, me? You want me to be quiet? And then she's like, not you, sweetie. You didn't say anything. Like, Pete, is everything okay? Pete, someone check on Pete. Okay, and then we're back at the restaurant, and Richie finds the letter from Mikey to Carmi, and it's stuffed like on the floor behind the lockers. And he almost puts it on Carmi's desk, but then he doesn't. He picks it back up from Carmi's desk and puts it back between the lockers. So Carmi does not get to receive that letter at this time, which is just like, I remember like when he picked it up and then put it on the desk, I thought he was gonna like throw it away. And I was like, no, literally, please don't. And then when he took it back, I don't know, I was just scared, but I'm glad that he just put it back and didn't like get rid of it or take it himself. But yeah, he did not give the letter from Mikey to Carmi to Carmi. And then after that, we're back in the kitchen and they're cooking up a storm. And Carmi comes up to Sydney and hires her for the first time. She is hired, and yes, it did make me a little bit emotional because I love the show. I really like the show, so like I just feel things very deeply because he hired Sydney, and it's kind of a big deal. And then we're coming towards the end. Carmi and Richie go outside, I think, to smoke a cigarette. And it's revealed that the health department is going to be coming back to re-inspect it. And I did not catch this. I've seen the first season of The Bear 6 times. This is my 7th time, and I just caught this. So I don't know what that says about me. But the health department is coming back because of Cicero, because of Uncle Jimmy, because we all know he has a lot of different connections and he can just make things happen. But I didn't catch that that's the reason the health department came back, was because Cicero or Carmi asked him to help him get the health department to come back. And then we get Carmi having this realization and kind of like a flashback in his head that he left the cigarettes on the stove. He thought that it was Richie. He blamed Richie, but it turns out it was him. When he was cleaning during that beautiful shot scene that I was talking about earlier, he took his cigarettes out and left them by the stove. And he realized that, and he's kind of like, oh my gosh, oh crap, that was literally me. And so we kind of get him sitting in that realization, and then his phone buzzes. He picks it up, and it's Sugar texting him about the thing, which is Al-Anon, which is like a group for family members who had other family members that were addicted to like a substance. So we get Sugar texting him, and then after that text, credits roll. And that is season 1, episode 2 of The Bear, called Hands. Just an absolutely excellent episode. Season 1 is such an interesting season because it's introductions, but in like the most beautiful way ever. And I talked about this in season 1, episode 1, or the first episode of the podcast, about how it's revealed slowly. Each person is slowly revealed to us, just like how it is in real life. When you first meet a person, you don't know anything about them, and then you slowly learn more about them. And that's what's happening in these episodes, especially leading up to the final episode of season 1. We're just slowly learning more and more about these characters, about what they've been talking about before we're introduced to them, like the fact that she says the thing and Carmi knows what she's talking about because they've obviously been talking about it forever. And just a lot of insight in this episode, because we get the fact that Richie's not really related to them. We get introduced to Richie's like daughter and his relationship with her. Just a lot of introductions, a lot of interesting things, and a lot of interesting things revealed in interesting ways. And it's just the bear being great at what it does. The bear being the bear. But that is season 1, episode 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like always, leave a comment on the community tab or in the comment section of our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, that's how you can get in contact with us, is our YouTube channel, the community tab. And just let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions. I do want to mention a comment that was left on my YouTube video. It said a weekly release would also be cool for your podcast. It would turn season 3 into a watch party. And this was left by Queasy Productions. And I so agree. That's why I really want to get caught up on these first 2 seasons so that we can watch season 3 together. So thank you so much for leaving a comment. I really wanted to talk about that. I'm sorry it's not till the end. I actually didn't see the comment until like in the middle of filming this. So sorry that I didn't put it at the beginning, but yes, thank you for leaving that comment, and it would be so cool for it to be like a watch party type of thing for season 3. But yeah, that is the episode. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.